It is not Wednesday, my dudes, which means it's time for another First Thoughts and Initial Impressions Epic 7 video. This one will be on the newest limited 5-star hero, Rinak, who was just shown earlier this morning over on YouTube. In case you're new here and don't know what we do during these First Thoughts and Initial Impressions videos, I'll give you my 2 cents on the character. Do I think they're good? Are they worth your hard-earned bookmarks? How should you gear them? Where should you play them? All of that stuff will be covered here in this video. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look at Rinak's S3 animation.
Consider this an honor. Come on, impress me. Trying to get away, are you? You can't outrun me. Turning to cowardly tricks?
That is legitimately one of the funniest S3 animations that we've ever had, and I feel like it perfectly encapsulates the character. In case you're curious, in the English dub of Epic 7, Rinak is voiced by Roshni Edwards, an up-and-coming voice actress whose body of work primarily consists of animated Disney shows. If you played through Epic 7 Origin Story, you may also have heard her Japanese voice actress, who is Ayaka Asai. Asai-san is best known for Lucy from the gacha game Zenless Zone Zero, as well as Miu Naruse from the Testament of Sister New Devil. And if you know who that last one is, then you might enjoy Hamsloth's content. Moving on to Rinak's stats, she is a 5-star Earth Thief of the Taurus Zodiac symbol. In case you're new to Epic 7, characters of the same rarity, class, and Zodiac symbol share the same exact stat lines. Currently, Rinak is the only 5-star Taurus Thief, therefore her stat line is unique to her. Taking a closer look at her stats, she has 1,112 attack, 480 defense, 5,623 health, 129 base speed, 15% starting critical hit chance, 150% starting critical hit damage, and no starting effectiveness or effect resistance. This translates to the highest speed in all of Epic 7, tied with Ran and Kayron. But it comes at the cost of having the second worst defense in the game and a very low health total. She has average stats otherwise across the board. Taking a look at her imprints, which are the dupe system in Epic 7 in case you don't know, she gives attack percentage for her team or attack percentage for herself. This is a fine imprint if you want to actually enhance the character and bring her to her fullest, but traditionally attack percentage is just an okay imprint, not exactly elite and something that you don't necessarily need. Before we analyze the character, what I like to do first is read the skills of the character's kit together so that way we're all on the same page. Let's start with the skill 2, as this was what was first shown in the video. Skill 2 is pickpocketing. You acquire 1 soul upon use and it has a 3-turn cooldown. It is a single target attack that dispels all buffs from the target before decreasing their combat radius by 30 to 50% depending on skill level. It also inflicts Pilfer on the target, which is a unique debuff that cannot be dispelled. Pilfer states that it decreases the attack, health, and defense of the target by 20%, and also grants spoils to the attacker. Pilfer can only apply to heroes and remains even after the target dies, so if they get revived, they will still have the Pilfer debuff. Pilfer is unaffected by effect resistance and whether or not the attack actually hits, which means if they dodge it, they still get affected by Pilfer. Remember, this debuff grants a unique buff in spoils as well. This is also undispellable. It increases Rinak's attack, health, and defense by 20% and can stack up to 4 times. Upon Rinak's death, dispels Pilfer from all enemies. As if all of that wasn't enough, because it's certainly a mouthful, pickpocketing also grants Rinak attack buff for 2 turns as well as an extra turn. And finally, the soul burn effect for the cost of 20 souls will cause this move to ignore effect resistance. Moving on to Rinak's skill 3, it is Clumsy Finish. You acquire 3 souls upon use and it has a 4 to 5 turn cooldown depending on skill level. This is a single target attack that penetrates 100% of the target's defense, but as a drawback cannot trigger a critical hit. Damage dealt increases proportional to Rinak's speed. After attacking, dispels all buffs from Rinak and inflicts stun on herself for 1 turn, but also deals 7,000 fixed damage to all enemies. The buff strip on herself as well as stun ignores effect resistance, making it all but guaranteed. Rounding it out, we come to Rinak's basic attack skill, which is Vital Point Slash. It also penetrates 100% of the target's defense, but it cannot trigger a critical hit. Damage dealt increases proportional to Rinak's speed. Now that you know the kit, as always, let's talk about the character. Right off the bat, we have to acknowledge Rinak's speed stat, as it being tied for the fastest hero in the game most likely means that she will be incredibly powerful. For the veterans out there, I don't think I have to explain how good Ran has been for years, but for the newer players out there, let me give you a brief history lesson. In Epic 7, speed is perhaps the single most powerful stat. The highest speed character dictates the entire pace of the battle, since they get the first action and they also get the most amount of turns in the fight. This means they have more chances of influencing the outcome. Several years back, Epic 7 released Ran, a 129 base speed thief who had an extra turn skill, buffs, debuffs, and defense penetrating attacks. Sound familiar? He went on to become a dominant force in the game's meta for a very long time. Rinak on paper seems very strong, but I'm not sure that she's as strong as Ran was in his heyday, as Epic 7's PvP metagame is much different now. I should also probably put this out there now for you newer players. Rinak seems like she's exclusively designed for PvP, so my apologies in advance for those of you who are looking for a PvE based hero. The dead giveaway comes in the fact that part of her skill 2, pickpocketing, only affects PvP heroes. Speaking of which, let's talk about pickpocketing, as this is one of the most loaded skills I've ever seen on a character. For such a fast character to have a full buff strip and a 50% combat radius pushback, complete with attack buff and extra turn stapled onto it, is absolutely wild in my opinion. That alone would make her a great choice for single target cleave teams, or even aggro teams that are looking for a first turn character to take the initiative. The fact that it also steals 20% attack, health, and defense from the target and gives it to yourself, while being undispellable, makes it a crazy good skill in my opinion. The soul burn is boring, but obviously very strong. I'm used to it at this point in 2025. Moving on, let's talk about her basic skill, Vital Point Strike, as there's not really a whole lot to say. Back in the day, I thought it was insane that Ran had a 20% defense penetration on his basic attack skill because, well, that meant he could do really good damage despite the fact that he was so insanely fast. This move having 100% defense penetration feels like straight up power creep, even if it can't land a critical strike. In fact, the ability to not land a crit is a massive boon for this hero, and we'll talk about that in just a minute when it comes to actually gearing her. Lastly, let's round out the discussion by talking about clumsy finish. 100% defense penetration is almost always good in this game unless you're facing down Empyrean Illidan. The cannot trigger a critical hit, as I already mentioned, is a boon. Again, we'll get to that in a second. If you're new, by the way, don't put too much stock into the speed damage scaling that it says in the description, because usually this is only a small increase and never really amounts to much, so I expect that to hold true here. The most interesting part, though, of this skill has to be the 7,000 fixed damage to all enemies, and the fact that it inflicts stun on herself for one turn and you can't avoid it. Let's start with that first part. Just think about it. This is the fastest hero in the game. She doesn't need to crit in order to deal damage. She doesn't need effectiveness to land skills because of her soul burn and pill for ignoring effect resistance. She gets free stats from spoils. She deals 28,000 damage split 4 ways, and that's just her damage floor. You could just completely forego everything on this character except for speed and either bulk or effect resistance, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye. Ran has steadily been losing play over time because of heroes like Zio and Harsetti, as well as the fact that his AoE attacks are a liability right now. Rinak is entirely single target, and effect resistance takes care of the Zio problem pretty handily, and you don't really give up too much for it. Harsetti unfortunately is still a buzzkill, and that's kind of to be expected. Remember though, I said there's 2 interesting parts to this move, the second part being the unavoidable stun. You know what character just got buffed in this past patch? Everyone's favorite meme girl, Dragon King Sharoon.
Foolish whelp.
That character has explosive potential with full buff strips and her cascade buff, which deals bonus fixed damage. Unfortunately, you only get that scenario when one of your characters gets slept or stunned. Well, Rinak basically enables this character. She gets self-stunned on her skill 3. This sets her up amazingly well for aggro or cleave versions of Dragon King Sharoon, allowing you to completely run down entire enemy teams while also getting rid of Rinak's drawback because Dragon King Shirun's passive gets rid of stun on your team. I see both of these characters together forming the foundation of a very strong aggro or cleave core. As for how we build this character, I think it's pretty simple. Speed set is king. This is the character in the game that's going to get the most value out of the set, so I see very little reason to not play it. After that, Torrent is going to be your best 2-piece set if you just want pure damage, since penetration is useless thanks to having 100% built-in penetration rate. Immunity and health are safe bets for 2-piece sets if nothing else, otherwise forego the set bonuses entirely and just go for the most speed that you can get. I'd avoid defense set on Rinak, as this is the character with the second lowest defense amongst 5 stars in the game, so the value for it just really isn't there. Lastly, resist set seems incredibly tempting to try on her alongside of an artifact like Bastion of Hope or Hostess of the Banquet. Like I said earlier, Zio is one of the biggest threats to fast characters that aren't rangers, and her not really needing any stats at all makes her an excellent candidate for both of these artifacts. If you're not going to go for the effect resistance route though, I'd recommend trying out her new artifact. It is Discreet Hands. It increases the attack of the user by 10 to 20% based on artifact level. At the end of the turn, when the caster has a debuff, increases combat radius by 15 to 30% based on artifact level, and grants stealth to the user for 2 turns. I think this is the best in slot option if you're not going to try for some of the effect resistance shenanigans. I'm also incredibly mad from a lore perspective that her old artifact, Windrider, is kinda somewhat trash on her. I would have thought that you'd make the OG artifact that made us all love this character in the first place work reasonably well with her, but alas no. What'll end up happening is you'll use Clumsy Finish, pick up a kill to proc Windrider to get the stealth of the damage amp for 1 turn, only to be stunned during that turn, so it's kind of like a non-bow. Anyways, I think Rinak is a must-pull unit due to her being a limited hero. She has many parallels to historically strong PvP heroes like Ran. The most surprising thing about her is how simple her build paths are, which honestly feels intentional for not only the new players that are coming into the game with this update, but as a direct rebuttal to all of those players for years that said heroes like Ran were simply too difficult to build. Just slap her on your fastest gear without a care for anything else, and you'll probably have a good time. And those are my thoughts on Rinak. But now I want to hear from you. Let me know how you feel about her down in the comment section below. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later now.